All right, grocery executives could be called to testify on Parliament Hill after canceling pandemic pay for its workers. Grocery giants Loblaw, Metro and Sobeys have been giving their employees a $2 per hour pay bump during the pandemic, but it'll be coming to an end. Well, now a motion calling on the companies to be questioned will be voted on tomorrow. And the man behind that motion is joining us now, Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, joining us from Toronto. Good morning. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, so is this all happened on the same day, right? So I guess the question for you is coincidence or collusion?
Right. So I have two questions, and I think I've heard a lot of correspondence already from grocery store employees and other Canadians who have expressed their outrage to say we're in the middle of a pandemic. How is it possible that these companies are canceling this emergency pay in the middle of a pandemic when they are seeing record profits? And the second question that we're faced, these companies have colluded in the past over bread, and I think it's our responsibility. Competition laws are the responsibility of our Parliamentary Industry Committee, and so it's our responsibility to ensure that these companies are not colluding to reduce the pay of essential workers in the middle of this pandemic.
So what do you want to hear from them? Let's say this motion gets passed. What specifically do you want to say and what do you want to hear?
I will be asking about their communications between one another, and I'll be asking about how it is that they, on the very same day, made the decision and public announcement to reduce pay for our essential workers in the middle of this crisis.
So the competition laws are clear in this country. If you can prove it, will that mean that they have to continue paying the bump up in pay?
Ultimately, so our job as a parliamentary committee, I think, is to highlight these issues and to hold companies to account where we can, to hold, in some cases, government officials to account on other issues where we can. It's ultimately the responsibility of the Competition Bureau to do a fulsome investigation, should they think it's warranted, after hearing the testimony before our committee.
But this bump up in pay was for the pandemic, so I'm wondering if the laws are there in place to try and win it back, should they not be embarrassed or shamed into it?
The laws are in place to ensure there's no collusion. Right. The question of whether the pay should be reinstated could possibly be part of that investigation. But I think in the end, that is a question that Canadians should be calling on these companies and provincial governments who are ultimately responsible for the minimum wage should be scrutinizing these companies to say, you said that these workers were essential. We are not on the outside of this pandemic yet. Why are you slashing wages now when you've seen record profits?
Are you going to recommend how long it should continue, or you want to make it permanent, that extra pay?
Ultimately, at the federal level, our responsibility is for competition laws, but I'll say on a personal basis, this pandemic has given me, and I think many others, reason to rethink how we pay essential workers, whether we pay essential workers enough, whether in our nursing homes or our grocery stores. And I personally think we should be paying our essential workers more throughout this pandemic and on the outside of this pandemic.
Yeah, a lot of people would agree with you, and let's at the end of the day, despite the stinking optics here, is it the government's job to force private sector beyond minimum wage here?
Well, it's the provincial government's job to ensure that the minimum wage is a living wage, and it's our federal government's job and our Competition Bureau's job to ensure there's no collusion to suppress wages, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And let me also say that Galen Weston has publicly agreed that we should have a more progressive wage.
Yeah.
I just yesterday was on a panel where we were discussing Facebook with George Washington University, and Mr. Zuckerberg has said similarly, we will be regulated. We encourage the government to regulate us. And is this the mantra of billionaires, that we want to do the right thing, but government has to make us? It is, as a legislator, as a parliamentarian, incredibly frustrating to see. If there's a right thing to do and one can afford it, why not to do it?
And it's important to note that there are record profits right now in the grocery sector, given what we're living. People aren't going to restaurants, and all that money goes to the grocery sector. And here they are saying, okay, we're going to end the pay bump during the pandemic, which is continuing.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And that's not good from a PR point, is it?
Not good from a PR perspective, and I think they were right to receive credit when they implemented the modest top-up. Let's be honest about it. It's a $2 an hour top-up, but they were right to receive credit, and I think they are then not above criticism when they remove it in the middle of a pandemic. And I'll say this was ostensibly always intended to be temporary, and so if they were to have ended it on the outside of the pandemic, I don't think we would have seen the same level of outcry. But I do think, as a society, we are rethinking how we ought to support our essential workers, and I hope that we have a serious reflection on the outside of this pandemic about a minimum living wage.
Has your team been working the phones? We're in a minority government situation. Are you going to get your own colleagues in the Liberal Party and I guess the NDP to support this?
I think there has been such enduring and overwhelming outrage to this issue that immediately we saw my NDP colleague and a Conservative colleague indicate their support as soon as I suggested I was going to bring the motion. So I'm reasonably confident that we're going to see it pass tomorrow.
When would they be called?
Well, we're going to have a meeting on June 22nd to discuss that, and I would hope to see them shortly thereafter.
And in the meantime, if they decide to, continue with the pay, will you give them a pass, or is it going to go ahead regardless?
If they were to reconsider and implement the pay, I wouldn't be interested in hearing from them.
Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, Liberal MP from the Toronto area, Beaches. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.